a world within our world. They've created a world unlike any other world.
Dungeons and Dragons. And a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special.
The ogre is amused by your joke and allows you to pass.
Dad, I'm just curious. What is it about Dungeons and Dragons that suddenly leapt out at you at age 60?
Dungeons, it'd be the dungeons.
Just what I love about role-playing games is being told exactly what to do.
Me too. You should introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to Guelph Community Radio 93.3 CFRU, and you are listening to The Spellbook, the show that brings you the tabletop role-playing game industry from a couple of veterans. I myself am Mike the Birdman Ashby. I am a writer in the tabletop RPG industry. I currently freelance for Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius, but I'm also joined by my compatriot from the lovely Feywild City that is known as London, Ontario. He's a streamer. He's a painter. He's my brother. He's one of my best friends. He is...
I am Damien, Magical Hack Morphit, part-time streamer, full-time nuisance.
That's right. So here on the Spellbook right here, we tend to talk about everything that is tabletop. We could be talking to developers, we could be talking to writers, or we could just be chatting about our favorite games. Do you want to know how to run a really good D&D game? Awesome. Do you want to learn how to plan your next heist in Cyberpunk Red? We got you covered too. But occasionally we like to venture out and talk to our peers out there. And let's be real, a lot of these guys are a lot more experienced than any of us are. And this was something that I came across. I think I was watching a video from Will from D&D Shorts. If you ever want to learn how to commit a war crime in a 5th edition compatible game, you go to them, and they were chatting about this company called Roll for Combat, and that's run by Stephen Glicker. He's the GM, and he is the owner of this, and I reached out to Stephen just a little bit before Christmas time, basically before the Spellbook was even crafted into the grimoire that you hear today on the radio, and I ran the idea past Damien, and we've been sharing the books that we had a chance to receive from Roll for Combat. And there's something here for everybody, whether you're a Dungeons & Dragons faithful, or whether you're more interested in the worlds of Galarian with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. There's something here for everybody. So I reached out to Steve and said, hey, can we do something? And I was able to include some of this material in TWIG's holiday gift guide. If you want to go back and check that out, you can go to thisweekingeek.net and search the 2025 edition of that. And I do recommend a few of the books there. And we're going to be taking a look at these books more closely over the course of the next couple of weeks and months here on both this show and the podcast, thisweekingeek.net. So, finally defeating the ancient scheduling dragon, which I'm pretty sure haunts across all realms and all planes of existence, me and Damien were able to lock down Stephen from Roll for Combat, and we want to welcome him to the show as we record this on this lovely evening.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I gotta say, it is really cool to chat with more people in the industry, and when I looked at your site, you guys offer a ridiculous amount of content for multiple systems. You scratch multiple itches, and I did not expect to have my Dungeons and Dragons and Pokemon-esque itch scratched, but somehow you managed to find that, which I find quite incredible.
Yeah, we publish everything for both Pathfinder and 5e, and we are probably the largest third-party publisher for Pathfinder. And we're also now the largest third-party publisher for Shadowdark, because we also we're finishing up a Kickstarter that we finished in mid 2025, and we're finishing up the books now. And we actually took some of our bestiaries and a few new things, the monster part system, which where you could take monsters and turn them into gear, and we converted that for Shadowdark. And so, yeah, we're pretty much hitting them all. So all the major games, all the major systems. And I know a lot of people, they just do one system, but we're a little crazy here. So,
But say, yeah, you have definitely covered most of the major systems, and I can only imagine how much time, effort, and just development time that must take. So, I guess as me and Damien begin to have this conversation with you, Stephen, I guess what is your origin story? Basically, how did you get started in the industry? Where does your love of tabletop come from? Like, did you start with like AD&D, or are you like a newer person, or maybe like one of those weird guys? I played Earth Dawn, I played Vampire the Masquerade. Where did you start?
So I am a child of the 80s. So I grew up with D&D. I started probably around 77 or so. I started with, the old, so old I barely remember it. The only thing I remember is my box had chits in it. We didn't even have dice back then. You had to like find, dice was even hard to find, and the dice you could find would crumble and fall apart because they were such garbage. But yeah, we grew up with it in the 80s, and pretty much everything that happens in Stranger Things, that's kind of like my childhood, except for killing monsters and demons. But everything else, I'm about that same age as those kids. Actually, I think I'm 1 year older than those kids in Stranger Things. So yeah, I've been playing D&D and then Pathfinder weekly for, what is that, 49 years, something like that. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I've been doing this a long, long, long time, and still to this date, we have a weekly Pathfinder game that actually I have been streaming. We also have our own podcast. Actually, Roll for Combat started out as an actual play where we were playing Pathfinder. Actually, first Starfinder, then Pathfinder, and I probably have something like 600 episodes, something like that, online as well as YouTube. So you can see us. We always stream all of our games, and that's kind of how it started out. And from there, it had basically to do with the pandemic. Is that I reached out to Paizo to publish something from their old, if you remember the RPG Superstar, they used to have this yearly contest where you would enter in something for Paizo, and if you won, you would go through multiple rounds, and then you'd write an adventure. But they stopped it because it was too hard to run. And I'm very good friends with Eric Mona, who's the publisher of Paizo, and I asked him if I could take it over, and he said sure. And then I took it over, and we had a contest where people can submit monsters, and it's been rebranded to RFC Monster Maker. And in fact, we're about to start our fourth contest. And then, yeah, people submit monsters. They're judged by the public, and they're judged by professionals. And the best ones go into a book, and your name is in there, and you get a medal, and you get paid. And we did that. And I was just going to like put out this little book that was like, just for fun. And the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh man, now what? Because I was just going to like print a couple and like sell them at Paizo's booth or something. And then my friends were all like, oh, just do a Kickstarter. And I'm like, okay. So I did a Kickstarter, and it did $301,000. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is a real thing now. So I guess this is my job. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. And I've been doing it ever since.
That's kind of incredible how so many people, it just begins with a conversation. Me and Damien a couple of weeks back were chatting with some friends over at Green, Ronin, Alex, and Steve, and how Alex got involved. It was a conversation, and you just happening to know people and asking, hey, can I do such a thing? It's amazing how many people who become very popular in this industry, it just kind of, we fall upwards, which is kind of amazing. So I guess when you started playing all these games, because you mentioned you were about the same age as the kids in Stranger Things. I'm also a child of the 80s. I'm 45 years old. I guess when you started looking at this hobby, when did this hobby really start to... You mentioned the pandemic, and I know a lot of people took a lot of chances during that time. What made you want to stick with this, to like saying, hey, I can really do something fun in my industry? Let's say it could have been just monsters. It could have been something just so simple, but clearly in your case, it expanded into something so much more.
Well, okay, so I I kind of have a weird origin story that would probably take a full hour to explain, but the very high level is that I've always been a geek. I've always been into computers. I went to Carnegie Mellon University. My day job was building Fortune 500 websites. I've been on the internet since '86. Like I've been I'm a geek from birth. And in fact, my parents used to joke that I was born a geek because they met on a thing called Operation Matchmaker, which was the very first computer dating service back in the 60s.
Oh my God.
I know. Which is like so funny now. And yeah, I had a computer. I had an Apple II Plus in like 1982, and I was programming games. And I actually started my first company in 1986 doing play-by-mail. Remember those?
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, I did play-by-mail games. I did this thing called Mall Maniacs, and I was really into play-by-mail. And I just naturally was in this. And then I actually diverted. I was in the video game world for a very long time. I actually went into video games. I was doing video games. I worked with Blizzard and Disney and Scholastic. I actually did a lot of work with Harry Potter. I did a lot of work with Timon and Pumbaa. I did a lot of work with Nickelodeon. I'm actually based in Manhattan. So all those companies are here. So it was very easy to get that work. And I was doing video games for about 20, 25 years throughout the 90s and the 2000s. And the thing about video games is they're really hard. Like it's one of those things. They're a lot of fun to play, but they're not so much fun to make because they're just really, really tough. And I decided to, after a while, I kind of stopped doing that. Like I basically scratched that itch. Like I didn't have to do video games anymore. And then things like GDC was canceled. Sorry, E3 was canceled. GDC, the Game Developers Conference, still exists, but E3 was like my favorite conference of the year, and that canceled. And then, so I just started to get back into TTRPGs. I mean, we were still playing, but actually what happened is I still went to Gen Con and all those, but I went to my first PaizoCon, and that was one of the best conventions I ever went to. Unfortunately, they don't do it anymore, but it was such a good convention. And I really liked Pathfinder. And then I just really got into Pathfinder, and I met all the people at Paizo, and I got friendly with everybody. And one of the reasons why we do Pathfinder work is my director of game design is Mark Seifter. He wrote Pathfinder. Like he's the author of Pathfinder, which is really handy because when I do my weekly game and whenever I have rules questions, I literally ask Mark because he wrote the rules, literally.
Nice.
Which, I know. It's one of those like, oh, man, come on. You can't do that. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can. Wait, it gets better. We only play Roll for Combat products. So half the time when people are complaining about something or I'm complaining about something, it's because I wrote the rule. So it's really funny. I'm like, it's really it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of strange at this point. Like everything I run is either something I wrote or tangentially wrote. So I actually have a background in publishing from college. I was on the school newspaper and I write a lot. And so I just, as I said, I was just like, I already knew how to do publishing. I already knew how to do layout and design because I do all the layout, I do all the design, I do all the art direction. And I just thought, okay, I'll do this for fun. And luckily, right place, right time. And then the other thing we did is that everything we did, we put on VTTs, we put on Foundry immediately. And again, that's my background in web design because it's all done on the web. And, a lot of people are resistant to putting stuff on Foundry and VTTs in like 2020, but we started from day one. And we, yet again, are actually the largest third-party publisher on Foundry. And only one's bigger now is D&D and Paizo. That's it. They're the only ones bigger than us. And, by embracing all these new technologies, I think, we were ahead of the curve with a lot of things that people are now starting to catch up on. So just kind of like a lot of things in my life coming together. And it just, again, just right place, right time. And also I'm older now, my kids are in college and I have more free time to, this is like half hobby, half full-time job. Okay, that's not it. It's like mostly full-time job. But it's more like a hobby. Like when I was making video games, it was so much work. But this is fun. This is like, okay, I'm actually making a living at this, and it's fun. So,
speaking of fun, guys, we will be taking a small break here right on Guelph Community Radio 93.3 CFRU. I've been Mike the Birdman Askwey, joined with Damien, Magical Hack Morphet. This is the Spellbook. We are talking with Stephen Glicker of Roll for Combat, but we must take a small break as we recharge our mana supplies, and you should hear about some more stuff that's happening here on the station. We'll be back right here on the Spellbook.
Hi, my name is Jermaine, and I just walked into CFRU 93.3 FM for the first time. Anybody can volunteer to make radio here. For more information, check out cfru.ca.
Welcome back to the Spellbook, right here on CFRU 93.3, Guelph Community Radio.
So over the course of the last little bit, we have been chatting with Stephen Glicker of Roll for Combat. And Stephen, to say you've got a resume is a very light thing to say, because you've done so much. Holy crap. And the amount of people that you know. And just before the break, you were talking about Foundry and virtual tabletops. For those of our listeners that aren't necessarily familiar with what that is, I'm only starting to dabble with that stuff now. What is that?
That is the way to play D&D or any role-playing game using the computer, so you don't have to be in front of people. And it's obviously exploded. The most popular one is D&D Beyond, where people can play on D&D Beyond using maps, which is pretty popular. People have probably heard of Roll20. Foundry VTT is one of the more popular ones. That's the most popular one for Pathfinder because it allows a lot of complexity, a lot of automation. And each one has their pros and minuses. And for me, we had a regular group when I lived in Manhattan, and we would meet on a weekly basis. It's the same group I meet with now. And then about 13 years ago, we all went different places. One of our members moved to California. Another one moved to Pittsburgh. Another one moved to New Jersey. And I also left the city and moved to the north. So I wanted us to keep playing. So I researched this, found some VTTs, learned more about it, and we started to play, electronically over the internet. And we did that for about 13 now years or something like that. And we've used every VTT under the sun. When we first were doing it, these things were really buggy and they barely worked, but it was better than nothing. It was better than not playing. And, now we still meet every week and we meet online, and, people have moved a dozen times since, and we're still playing. And that's the best part, is that I'm actually using the same group or playing with the same guys that I've been playing with since the 90s. It's like the same people. And if it wasn't for the VTT, that would be impossible, because we literally live all over the country and sometimes all over the world. So there you go.
Yeah, actually, the game I played with Mike there for a little bit, we actually had one of our players in Russia.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question in regards to that. When you're looking at a VTT, what are some of the things that you look for as either a GM or a player?
Well, for me, it's a little different because I'm a publisher, so I look at market share. You have to look at things like market share, how easy it is to update it. There's a lot of technology aspects to it. One of the things about Foundry is also one of the newest, and I'm not trying to diss some of the older ones. They've been rewriting their code bases. One of the problems with a lot of them is that they're older. And because they're older, their code bases might be like 10, 12 years old. And so they're kind of locked in place where technology was 10 years ago. And let me tell you, things have really changed a lot, especially after the pandemic. Like the browser technology has just gone leaps and bounds. The thing about Foundry, they are based on HTML and browsers. The guys who run it are true geeks, and they really know their stuff. And they update it all the time. And I mean, they actually update it too much. It's the only downside, I would say. But it allows me to update our code all the time. So as the rule sets update, obviously for Pathfinder, they went from Pathfinder to Pathfinder Remastered, and we had to update all of our code to work with the new remaster rule set, and we could. And some of the other ones, like in the past, Roll20, you couldn't really do that. It was like once you published it, it was locked in. And it has to do with just the way the technology works. And that's a big limiting factor, is like, if you have erratas or if you want to change something, you can't. You're kind of stuck. But we are always updating and modifying our code, not just to take advantage of the latest and greatest technologies that Foundry, has, but also, if they update the rule set like Pathfinder did, it was like, thank God we were able to update it, because otherwise we'd be locked into the old version of Pathfinder, which really no one, not no one's playing, but that's the past, not the future. So that was really it. It's a mixture of things, but mostly technology, and also that's where a lot of people are at right now. I'd say the leader for Pathfinder and Shadow Dark is Foundry by far. For D&D, it's Roll20 and D&D Beyond, and those are probably the two biggest ones. There's others out there, but those are kind of the biggest.
So one of the things that I found, if there was anything beneficial, and I use that word big quotation marks, that came out of the pandemic was it seemed like the hobby of TTRPGs really exploded. And so many people came together. I know you mentioned your group from the 90s is still together. My private group is the one I'm currently a part of right now. This is the longest I've ever had a group, and that's 2 years continuous. And that seems to be like, I never want to lose it. I'm so protective of this group. But it seems now that, like, with people all over the country, and even with me and Damien having that access to all over the world, like, the hobby seems like it's so accessible, and it's such a part of popular culture now. Like we've mentioned Stranger Things, it's been mentioned on The Big Bang Theory. We've even had movies about it. I mean, we had the big Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, a couple of years ago, and now there's talk of a Baldur's Gate TV series coming into it. So I guess since you've been in, I will say, the trenches for decades at this point, what is it like to watch this hobby come back with a vengeance? Like, this thing is wielding like a +5 Vorpal sword, swinging for critical hits every time. It just seems like we're in a rather unique age of RPGs right now.
Yeah, it's we talk about this a lot. I have a weekly show on my YouTube channel, and we have a live show every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we discuss this. This is exactly what we discuss. And D&D is in a really strange place because D&D is one of those products that everyone knows, everyone's heard about. It is like part of pretty much worldwide culture, but it's still not as popular as you think it is. That's the strange thing. It's like, it's one of those, like, we have friends who play D&D, but how many people actually play about D&D versus talking about D&D? One of the strangest things that ever happened to me a few years ago, I was like, I don't know where I was, like at a restaurant, and I heard these two women who were like in their 40s talking about Vecna. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? I was like, what? And they obviously were not players, I could tell. And they were talking about Stranger Things. I was like, okay, I was sitting there like, wow, what is going on? But this happened at the same time when Lord of the Rings took off, if you remember that. Like, this is not a huge surprise to me because Lord of the Rings took off and took over the culture, and fantasy's become very big, and then Marvel's become really big. And don't forget, I worked on the Harry Potter franchise with Scholastic back when the book 2 was out, and they just released book 3. And I was like, what is this? I never heard of it. They're like, oh, it's going to be big. And I was like, okay, and that really is what opened things up. It was a combination of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. That is where it actually started. And then it just has morphed into Stranger Things and Big Bang Theory, and then Critical Role. And yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that people like to, and obviously Game of Thrones, can't forget that one. It's like fantasy has become mainstream, but playing D&D is still, it's big, but it's not as big as you think it is. It's like one of those, like, everyone talks about it, but if you go to your friend group that are not gamers and ask them how many of them have played D&D, probably none of them, and that happens to me. Like, I talk to my friends, like, have they done them? Nope, no, they've heard of it. They've seen Stranger Things. They know who Vecna is. They know the Demigorgon, but I asked them, oh, you want to play D&D? They're like, oh, no, I'm okay. So it still has a way to go, and it's popular. I think it's just more in your face now, and it's definitely more people are playing it, but it still has a long way to go before it really becomes kind of where it was. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was like that in the 80s. It just seemed like it was because there wasn't as much news in the 80s, but we still got a long way to go. But I will say the 2 new shows coming out, the Baldur's Gate 3 show from HBO, that's a big freaking deal. Like they got their best showrunner on that one, and that's a big deal. And then the other one is the D&D show that's being made by Netflix, and they got the guys from Deadpool doing that one. So they have like 2 of the best showrunners in the business doing these shows. And I'll tell you the reason why. So the reason they're doing that is because the D&D movie, which did better than you think, it did okay in the theaters. People said it was a flop. It actually wasn't a flop. It just did okay. But it did insane numbers on streaming, like ridiculously good numbers. Because the D&D movie is one of those movies like, oh, I don't want to go and see it, and I don't want to pay money for it, but I want to watch it. And that's why it did so well, which is why they were able to get 2 huge D&D properties coming out on Netflix and HBO with 2 of the best showrunners in business, because, you know, people will watch it. So I'm actually curious to see where it goes in a few more years. Right now, I think it's still like in baby steps mode, believe it or not.
Yeah, it always kind of impresses me when you see how these properties are. Like, I remember it was a big deal when Critical Role kind of blew up, and I'd hear people randomly talk about it on social media. And now there's comic books in stores, the Amazon Prime series, The Mighty Nine, and Vox Machina got greenlit for multiple seasons. And I don't know, like, I guess because I'm a geek too, and I'm in the trenches, and I can't always peek over the top to see what is really kind of going on. Like, much like you, I've heard people I wouldn't expect to hear them talk about Vecna or the Demogorgon. I've even heard, I swear to you on this, I've heard people talk about Strahd on the Street before, and it's like, you don't look like my type of people. I'm glad you're here. But still, it's always kind of strange just to hear that. So we're going to take another small break here on the Spellbook right here on 93.3. I've been Mike the Birdman, actually joined by my compatriot and hetero life mate, Damien Magical Hat Morphit. We will be back here chatting with Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat. We're just going to keep talking about the RPG industry, but we're going to talk about some cool stuff that Roll for Combat can offer for your Pathfinder game or your Dungeons and Dragons game and beyond. So we will be back right after this, right here on Guelph's Community Radio, 93.3 CFRU.
This is Eliza from Mauno, and you're listening to CFRU.
Welcome back to the Spellbook on 93.3 CFRU, Guelph Community Radio.
So over the course of the last half hour, we've been chatting with Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat. So you've mentioned Pathfinder a lot, and that is a game I fell in love with mostly because I didn't feel the weight and the pressure for having 40 or 50 years of D&D weighing me down. What was it that attracted you to the Galarian setting?
Well, to be honest, we really enjoyed 3.5. So Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 was probably our favorite version, and we played that one to death. And then, quite frankly, we liked playing the adventure paths that were in Dungeon Magazine. Actually, my favorite adventure path of all time is Age of Worms, and I ran Age of Worms, and I just loved it. And I won't get into all the minutia, but basically, when D&D decided to make a 4th edition, that Paizo decided to continue 3.5 and doing adventure paths, and they invented Pathfinder. So that's where Pathfinder came from. Pathfinder was, they used sometimes would call it 3.75 because it was, you know, a continuation of the original 3.5 rules. 4th edition came out. We played 4th edition. I actually played a campaign of 4th edition all the way to level 20, and we had a great time. And 4th edition is a very misunderstood edition. It is a excellent TTRPG. It is very tactical. It's got amazing combat. It has some of the best combat systems I've ever seen, but it's not D&D. It doesn't feel like D&D. It had a lot of growing pains, and I could do a whole show on that too, because that they basically built it to mimic World of Warcraft, and I've had many discussions with Chris Perkins about this. And back in the day when I was working with Blizzard, we used to talk to them about this stuff. Anyhow, that's a whole other discussion. Is that, that's why we did it. Is that we just like 3.5, and I loved running all these adventure paths. Adventure path, there's these pre-made adventures that would take you from level 1 to 20 or so, and Paizo would put them out, and they're all written by professionals. I much prefer to run things made by other people rather than me writing it myself, and I just adjust them, and that's what I was doing. And then eventually Pathfinder decided to go to second edition because, to be honest, even I was getting sick of it, because by the time Pathfinder first edition was retired, we were playing it for 20 years. And even we were like, all right, I think we're getting a little sick of Pathfinder 3.5 and 3.75. So thank God they came out with a new version. And in my opinion, I think Pathfinder second edition is the best TTRPG by far in the market and maybe ever made. I mean, I'm a little biased. I mean, I literally hired the guy who wrote it, to be my director of game design. So there you go. But it's extremely modular and it's extremely well balanced. That's actually one of the reasons why people don't like it, is because it's so well balanced that you can't really break it. And a lot of people like games that you can break and that you could just tear apart. But that's also why we like it. It's a very balanced game and it's a massive challenge. And my players, they've been playing as long as I have. Like, we play on ultra hard mode. We don't play in hard mode. They play on super hard mode. Like, they literally give their characters flaws. They don't optimize. I mean, they're up to level, they'll be up to like level 7 and they didn't even add a +1 or a +2 to their weapons. And I'm like, come on, guys, you might want to start putting some stuff on your weapons and your armor. And they're like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm like, oh my God, you're going to get killed. But yet they managed to do really well. And that's the thing. It's a very crunchy, meaty system. And we do play 5th edition. 5th edition is more when I want to feel like a superhero. And that's a lot of fun. But my core group, we like to play really, it's like, it's like it's like Dark Souls, or Elden Ring, that's what it is to us. It's just a really crunchy, meaty, tough game. And at this point, that's what we enjoy.
That's actually one of the best descriptions of the difference between 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition that I've heard anybody say, because that's exactly what it is. Pathfinder 2nd edition is for the people who like that crunch. Whereas D&D 5th edition, at least to me anyway, it feels like, okay, nothing I do, unless you decide to do real dumb or the dice really, really hate you that day, nothing you do is going to generally kill your character.
Yeah, I mean...
and it's baked into the system.
Yeah, keep in mind we were playing since 1st edition, and you want to play a game that's hard. Okay, play 1st edition D&D. Okay, like it is death. Like that game, you just you do not survive past level 1 or 2. Like it's just very hard, and that's what we liked. We grew up with that. We grew up that you'd have death saves constantly, save or die, it's called. And you'd roll and say, I failed the saving throw. Okay, I'm dead. That's it. Start over, and you would have characters you'd go through, characters left and right. And, that's the thing with D&D 5th edition. I get it. I mean, I understand why it's like that. And it's a lot of fun being the superhero and just beating the crap out of monsters. But we play... we just finished up a campaign that took us 6 years, and we went from level 1 to 20. And it's hard to do that with D&D. Actually, I won't get into the numbers, but most people stop playing after about 10th level of D&D. It's very rare to go past 10th level. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but it's extremely rare. It goes off a cliff after 10th level. And most people don't even go past 5th level. And it's just, people just play very differently. But Pathfinder is really designed that you can play to level 20. And I tell you, it plays just as well at level 20 that it does at like level 3. And that's a secret, because most games don't, but it does. And we did it. We played it all the way. And let me tell you, they were still fighting for their life at level 20. In fact, I mean, a little different. They would go down and they'd get instant resurrected. So the fights were a little different, but still, they were still having fun. And they definitely felt like gods. I'll tell you that much. They were literally fighting demons and demigods at that level, and it was awesome. It's like they felt like they earned the superhero status. They had to get there. It took 6 years for them to get there, and a lot of grinding and a lot of smaller battles. But and I do play a weekly D&D game, and even at the lowest levels, I feel like we're just crushing everything. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's what we like. We like really tough, meaty, crunchy combat. And also, that's probably why Shadow Dark is having its moment, because people like Shadow Dark. They like a really tough, gritty game. That's, if you look at Shadow Dark is basically D&D. It is a version of D&D. It uses kind of the same rules, but it's way harder and it is unrelenting and you will die. And people like it because, again, I think they've never experienced it. They didn't start on hard mode and then go to easy mode. They started in easy mode and now they're trying out hard mode and they're like, oh, this is D&D on hard mode. This is great. I love this.
Oh yeah, like my first experience with D&D was back in the 90s with D&D Advanced D&D 2nd edition. And like my first character was a dwarven rogue. And I think he lasted all of 5 minutes and died to a trapped chest. Because like I decided like I'm going to play it as per, what the description of dwarves and rogues are. And I'm like, oh, hey, a treasure chest. I'm going to go pick the lock and open it. And yeah, no, I did not last on that character. But yeah, like, and that's, I think a lot of people, like you say, I think a lot of people are seeing the fun in failure and seeing the fun in having a difficult and hard game rather than, oh, I'm going to beat everything and win all of the time type deal. Because that, I don't know, for me, it gets kind of old after a while.
That's one thing I've actually noticed, Stephen, especially when it comes to the monsters that come out of Roll for Combat. They're different where I feel a lot of them, victories feel earned in a way that some other monsters from other third-party publishers or even traditional, like be it Wizards of the Coast or Paizo, the monsters just feel, I don't know, I feel like I'm earning a victory here. Like, there's no, you can't cheap out on these monsters. You really got to fight. And I love that about a lot of the design principles that have been brought into it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the secret. So you're talking about, so we have Battlezoo Bestiary, we have Battlezoo Bestiary, Strange and Unusual, and we just came out with, it's literally came into the warehouse this week, Battlezoo Bestiary, Elemental Storm, and all the monsters were designed kind of by committee, but they were part of a contest. So we literally got the best of the best, literally. Like, we'd have hundreds and hundreds of entries. They go through multiple rounds, and then we take them and fine-tune them. So these monsters they're complex, and they do a lot of things. And the other thing is that we start off, I'll tell you some secrets of the trade. We start off with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So an average monster in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is 550 to 650 words. The average monster in Dungeons and Dragons is about 300, maybe 400 words. It's actually much smaller. Well, that limits the complexity of the monsters because when you have much smaller word counts, you don't have as much in the stat blocks and what they can do. So by starting off with a larger stat block and more words, we have much more complex monsters. So we always start with about 600 to 650 words per monster, and we give them a full page. The other thing is that we then take the Pathfinder monsters, and we have a whole crew here, and they convert it to 5e. And we try to keep the flavor of the Pathfinder version as much as possible. And by the way, we always do it. It's a lot easier. We always convert from Pathfinder to 5e. It's really hard to do it the other way. And that mostly has to do because 5e is usually much shorter and Pathfinder is much longer. So it's very hard to it's very hard to add stuff, but it's very easy to cut stuff. So we also redo the layout, and one of the issues with 5e is the way it does the layout of Dungeons and Dragons is that they do the square stat blocks, and you don't have as many words per page. So we do a different layout on our stat blocks on our pages, so we are able to get 600 words per monster for a 5e monster. So when you're thinking and saying, it's like, wow, these monsters seem way more complex and they do a lot more. And it's like, wow, they do so much. It's like, yeah, they literally do. Like we literally, like our stat blocks, like one of our pages is as much as 2 pages of a D&D product. And that's why, like we pack more in, and we do that because we changed the layout, or I changed the layout, and it was on purpose. And that is the result. So there you go.
Nice. Now, speaking about like the monsters and the bestiaries and stuff like that, one of the things looking through the two that you have out now, the bestiary and the strange and unusual bestiary, the thing that struck me and like caught my attention the most was monster parts and using those to upgrade characters and upgrade items. So I guess what my question for you in regards to that would be is what was your inspiration for coming up with that system?
So when I hired Mark Seifter, the very first thing I said to him was basically, okay, I need to do this system where you can make gear, you can make all your armor, your weapons, all your gear from monsters after you defeat them. And it's from basically Monster Hunter, if you played the Monster Hunter video game. And it's, because I felt like, I won't get into it, but one of the design principles that people forget about, people talk about rules, they talk about the core rules of a game. That's one principle. The other principle is the classes. Okay, that is a major principle of a game. The other principle is like spells and items in the economy. But the secret fourth principle that no one talks about is the monsters, because without the monsters, you don't have a game. Okay, it's in fact the monsters are the most important part of the game, but no one talks about them directly, and that's a missed opportunity, like a big missed opportunity, because most of the time that's what you're doing. Like the reason those other 3 exist is so that you have something to fight against. And in most cases it's monsters. And so I always felt it was weird. Like you fight a monster and then they have gold pieces. I'm like, really? Why would an owlbear be carrying around weapons and gold pieces? That makes no sense whatsoever. And it just seemed like a natural, it seemed like a natural fit. So we came up with the system for D&D and Pathfinder, and we've expanded it in every book, and we keep going, where instead of just, going to a store, and that's also weird. You go to a store and you just buy magic weapons. I don't know. It felt weird. It was like, no, everything you defeat, you can turn into, you make your magic weapons, you make your armor, and it comes from the monsters. And what you can do with them is dependent on the monsters you defeat. And let me tell you, once you start using it, you'll never stop, because you think leveling up your characters is fun. Wait until you start leveling up your gear. And you start, like, in one of our games, someone killed a mimic and his sword would change shape while he was fighting because he made his sword out of a mimic. And someone else made their sword out of insect parts. So it was like this weird insect sword. So everyone had their own gear. So everyone still had a +1 weapon, but everyone's +1 weapon was totally unique. And everyone's armor was totally unique. So it just added this whole new dimension to the game, and they love it. People who play with it are totally hooked, because it just gives you something else to level up. Now you level up your gear as well as your character. So it's just, that it took a long time to figure out and implement, but now we have the basics. We just keep adding to it, and each book has a new rules edition that allows you to expand and do more with it, like Elemental Storm, which is out now. We have 20 different elements you can add to your gear. So you can add fire or electricity or poison or darkness and so forth. And you could also do it with your armor. And, and strange and unusual, we have like strange things you can add, kind of Eldritch Horror type things you can add to your gear. So, it just never ends.
I do love the depth of customization that you've definitely been able to add to the games. But we're gonna take another break here on the Spellbook, right here in Guelph Community Radio 93.3 CFRU FM. I'm joined with Damien Morfitt, the Magical Hack, but I'm also joined with Stephen Glicker of Roll for Combat. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some other things you can add to your game, which definitely appeals to my inner Pokemon player. We will be back, guys, right after this, right here on the Spellbook.
Hey folks, it's your girl Amarawa, and I run a show called Radio Purg. So Radio Purg is our weekly spoken word show on CFRU 93.3 FM, Guelph's campus and community radio station, where we showcase the exciting work OPIRG is doing and talk about current issues in the community related to social and environmental justice. Generally, the show consists of recorded talks, live and pre-recorded interviews, spoken word pieces, and music. Listen to us on Thursdays from 3 to 4 p.m. at 93.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Spellbook on 93.3 CFRU, Guelph Community Radio.
So over the course of the last 40 or so minutes, we've been talking with Stephen Glicker of Roll for Combat. We have talked about Galarian, we've talked about Dungeons and Dragons, we've talked about so much over the course of the last little bit. And one thing that I want to talk about is we've talked about monsters, we've talked about things you can level up. But you do have another book that really caught my attention, and it's called Eldramon. And I'd love for you to explain this to my listeners out there, because as soon as I read Eldramon Trainer, Elemental Trainer, and you showed us something just before we went on the air, and immediately I was like, oh, I want to run this at a convention. So please bring us the hype.
So this was actually the main thing I wanted to do when I started Roll for Combat was, and it was always in the back of my mind, is to pretty much bring Pokemon monster training type combat and systems to Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. And the other thing when I hired Mark is I said, hey, I want to do, Pokemon. It's more like Digimon, kind of Pokemon Digimon, but for D&D and Pathfinder. And he's like, great. I'm like, I'm warning you, it's going to be really complex, a lot of work. And, and he's like, oh, perfect. It's a challenge. And yeah, it's Eldramon are elemental monsters, and they exist everywhere in the world. And it's a lot. There's 20 different elements, and all the various monsters correspond to each various element. You can find them and befriend them anywhere in the world. And when you befriend them, they're in pet form. And then they can hang around you as pets, and anyone can do it. You don't have to be a trainer, so anyone can have pets. Again, kind of taking from World of Warcraft, where that was my favorite thing in World of Warcraft is the pet system, where you could just collect pets. Well, you do the same thing here, and everything can be done through. We have a lot of options. You can do it yourself. The GM doesn't have to do anything. That's the other thing. It works in any game. If the GM doesn't want to get involved, the players can just roll up the tables. We have full tables in there on how you find Eldramon, where you find them, what's the chances, what type of Eldramon. If the GM doesn't want to do it, the players can do it. And then when you find them, you befriend them, and then they can phase in and out. We have them phase in. They're basically out of reality, and then they phase into reality, and they can fight each other. But to them, it's like play fighting. They also can't die. They're immortal. So there's a lot of mystery behind them. So when they, quote, fight each other, it's like a 10-minute timeout. All that really happens is like when one wins and the other one loses, they just can't rematerialize for like a day or so, but then they're right back and they're fully healed and it's like nothing happened. So they enjoy it. They actually have a lot of fun. And you can evolve them to battle form. And then if you're a trainer, you can actually turn them into evolved form. So each Eldramon has pet form, battle form, evolved form. We have different art for each one, different powers for each one. And from a mechanic point of view, this is where it gets crazy. It's basically like 20 different spell systems. It's like, because every single one is completely different than the other. Like fire is like fire. It's like blasting. Life, you can actually do AoE life spells. Like you can actually put things on the battlefield, like fonts that will heal you. So you can actually put things on the field and then people will step in them and get healed. We have water, which has high tide and low tide. And every time you use a power, it changes from high tide to low tide. And then all your powers have two abilities, an offensive ability at high tide and a defensive ability at low tide. There's a lot. So you can, you get 3 Eldramon when you start off as a trainer, and you get to decide which one. So like if you're fighting undead, you're like, okay, I'm going to bring my life Eldramon, my fire Eldramon, and maybe death Eldramon or something. And then if you're fighting something else, you're like, okay, I'm going to bring my electricity Eldramon, my water Eldramon, and my earth Eldramon. So you could change it up, and they each play completely differently. And we play tested it for a year with hundreds of play testers. So we made sure this thing was just absolutely battle ready before we published it. And people love it. People love it, especially with kids, because it's both simple and complex enough that kids really enjoy it. We have a line of plushies. We have a line of minis. We actually have it's big. It's not just it's just a Eldramon book. It's like, well, there's a lot more to it. We have a card game that's coming out, Eldramon Battles. And this is exclusive, we are working on a miniature game called Eldramon Arena, and that we are probably going to give out the rules for free and just sell STLs so that you can just, use your own maps. It'll work with any map. You can just use any battle map, and then you just can play Eldramon. There's a lot. You can see there's a lot. If you like Eldramon, if you like Pokemon, if you like Digimon, and you always wanted to add it to the world of D&D, and then the 2 classes are Eldramon Trainer, where you can actually have a stable of Eldramon that go out and fight for you, or the Elemental Avatar, which we modeled after airbending and the Avatar, because you basically embody an Eldramon inside of you, and then you use their powers. So they're fused with you, so you can do all the bending, and you're much more powerful. So again, we put a lot of thought. It took us years to develop, and I guess I said over a year of play testing, and it's been out for now 2 years, and it's really popular. It's probably our best seller. So
nice. Yeah, looking at the book, I'm gonna have to get some of them STLs and print them off and paint them, because the designs for a lot of these Eldramon are just awesome.
Yeah, the STLs, we actually have the artist, the same guy. He does a lot of Whiz Kids, so we have our STLs are really good. They came out great. So
there is one thing that you shared with us, that you're going to be launching a new Kickstarter for the Eldramon towards the end of March, correct?
Yes, this is the first official expansion, and it's called Eldramon Legends, because we have in Eldramon, there's common Eldramon, uncommon, and rare Eldramon. And as you might imagine, they get cooler as they get up there. And we are coming out with Eldramon Legends, which are 13 unique Eldramon for the 13 unique elements that we have out right now. We only have 13 of the 20. We're planning on doing another book next year, which will finish up the line, and we'll have all 20 elements out. I'll be honest, we couldn't get all 20 into one book. If we tried to do 20 into one book, this book would have been like 600 pages. It's already it's a massive book, and it's very dense. And we're like, we can't get them all. So we got 13 in there, and then we'll do 7 more. And this Eldramon Legends, which goes on Kickstarter at the end of March, you can find out more about Eldramon. We have over 150 new Eldramon. We have new powers. We have the lore behind each one. We have new items. We have new functionality for people already playing Eldramon. And then the legendary Eldramon, these are legendary Eldramon that only one of each type exist in the world. And you can go on, we have a little quest on where you can find them. And then if you befriend them, they won't join you, but they can share an essence of themselves with you. So you can summon and then use a legendary Eldramon in your game if you manage to go through a little quest. It's a little different than the rest. And if you're listening to this before the Kickstarter launches and you go to eldramonlegends.com, we have a special deal where you put down $1 and you get the special edition, limited edition hardcover, which we never even did before. And it's normally $90, and you'll get it for $1. But if it's already passed, don't worry. We'll still have it. It just won't be for $1, but you can still get it at eldamonlegends.com. And we're going to have, it's designed for people both coming to the game for the first time, as well as people who are, already using Eldamon in their game and they just want to add more and more powers and options. And again, this is for Pathfinder and 5e.
I gotta say, I am ridiculously excited. Like, the more I heard you talk about this as like mythic and legendary Eldamon, I'm already thinking the Pokemon part of my brain is like going like, cool. So I need to find someone who's like Arceus. I need to find someone who's like Rayquaza and Eternatus. This is going to be awesome. Mostly because I guarantee you my first Eldamon battle is going to be in Castle Ravenloft. And it's going to be awesome because I'm going to bring my own battle maps. This is really exciting. Like, Stephen, you have got something really special, especially for multiple games, that it doesn't exclude anybody. You've got a wonderful system created. So if people want to find out more information about you and your products, where are they going to?
You can go to rollforcombat.com or battlezoo.com. Battlezoo is just a line of products. They're all underneath the Battlezoo banner. So people are like, what does that mean? Trust me, it's just our line of products. They're called Battlezoo. And that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. So again, thank you for taking time out of your exceptionally busy schedule. Hopefully we haven't taken you away from your Pathfinder game, but I'm sure we will be chatting with you more in the future. Guys, that was our interview with Stephen Glicker of Roll for Combat. Please go check out their stuff. And since this is airing in the middle of March, I really invite you to go check out their Kickstarter. Once again, you can check out the link in the episode description here, either on CFRU's website or on thisweekingeek.net. What are me and Damien talking about next week? I don't know yet, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. So for the Spellbook from the great city of London, Ontario, we have been.
I am Damien, Magical Hack Morphit, full-time nuisance, part-time streamer.
I love it. And I have been Mike the Birdman, future Eldamon Master, and we will catch you guys next time right here on Guelph Community Radio, CFRU 93.3. And as I'm often fond of saying whenever I sign off, be excellent to each other, especially during these trying times. We'll talk to you again soon, right here on The Spellbook.
It's not enough. We have a gallery of villains to look out for, but now we could be infiltrated by a shape changer. I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced or because this group is full of weirdos.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Spellbook. If you happen to have any comments or suggestions, please send us an email at thespellbookshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're hungry for more, you can find Mike at thisweekingeek.net, covering a variety of nerdy topics, and Damien on YouTube at Magical Hack Makes for more TTRPG conversation.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.